Thanks for stopping by. In this video, we're gonna see why we need Selenium jars. So if you have already started automation, the first thing which we do in automation is download Selenium jars and import it to a project, right? Or any other automation tool in general. But the thing is why we need those jar files, so let's talk about it in detail. So first I'll talk about what the jar files are in terms of Java technical aspect. Then we'll see why we are downloading those Selenium jars. Is that one jar file or multiple jar files, and why we are doing that, so we'll go and understand technicality behind the Selenium jar files, and then we'll see what are the right steps to be added in the jar files, where exactly we can do it. There are a couple of different ways, so we'll explore them, and then after that we'll see why if you don't add jar files, then what. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back. Those who are new to my channel, my name is Saurabh and I'm in automation industry for last 12 years, and I enjoy sharing automation learning with all of you folks, and I also enjoy teaching automation. I teach several automation tools including Selenium, OpenScript, Puppeteer. So if you are someone who are looking for automation training right from scratch in a step-by-step way, so let me know. The enrollment link is in the description of the video. So first of all, what is jar files? So jar files in a simple language, guys, it's a compressed Java files. Okay, so let's take an example that if you want to share a couple of images or photos with someone else over an email, what you do, you go to an email, you attach directly those JPG file, PNG files, right, in an email. But let's say if you have hundreds of photos to be shared with your friend over an email, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna attach all the 100 photos in an email? Probably no, right? What you're gonna do, you're gonna put all those 100 files in a folder and then you'll zip that folder, right? Zipping, basically you're trying to compress it, and then you'll say, okay, I'll zip that in a folder and then I'll attach that zip file in an email and then send it, right? That is a more convenient way, correct? Exactly in a similar way you can imagine the jar file. So what is jar file? We're gonna create it today, so don't worry. In a simple language, it's a compressed Java file, or it contains a lot of Java code. So rather than sharing multiple Java files, what we do, we create a jar file of a project which internally contains a lot of Java files, and then whoever wants to use my Java code, I'll say, hey, rather than sharing 10 different Java files with you, I'll simply give you this jar file. So please take this jar file, add it to your project, and then you can start using it. Okay, so now you guys would have understood what is Selenium jars. So let's understand, guys, when the Selenium folks has developed this tool, or when they started distributing this, they could have done it in numerous ways. They could have said that, hey, I have a lot of Java files, a lot of code, and then if you guys want to use it, then copy paste this code. I'll put it on Google Drive, let's say, right? Or let's say I'll put it on a GitHub, and then you can copy paste and then create your own Java files based on that and start using it. But that is not a convenient way, and that is why what they have done is they have created a project. They have written a lot of Java code which will make your life easy, and then they wanted to make it open source. They wanted to share it with the community, so they created the jar files, and then they say that, hey, if you want to use this tool, then you just download these jar files, add it to your project, and then you can start consuming the methods which are written inside those jar. Inside jar we have a Java files, inside a Java files we have class files, and inside a class files we have a methods, right? So if you want to consume those methods, then you need to take my jars, add it to your project. So don't worry, I'm gonna step by step show you. We're gonna create our jar file in this session. We're gonna use those jar files in another project and see how exactly that works. So then the idea will be more clear to you. Why we exactly add it in a class path file, build path file. So basically, guys, when you want to consume a methods from those jar files, I may even call it as libraries, okay, then you need to give an instruction to your Eclipse or IntelliJ, whatever ID you are using, that, hey, when I'm running my code, then this method, the one I'm using, is coming from some library, so please consider this particular jar files in compiling a code. In a simple language, you are just giving an instruction by adding it in a build path, that hey, when I'm running my code, it's not just my code which you have to think or which you have to consider, but I am consuming some methods which are in these jar files. So please make sure that you take necessary steps required to compile that as well. Okay, so that's why we add those jar files in the build path. So guys, let's understand these are the two different Java projects. When I say Java projects, see, this is one Java project, this is another Java project, this is the another Java project, right? I have a different Java projects in this Eclipse. So let's say if I have developed some methods in this Java project, as you guys know, the hierarchy is project, package, class, and then inside a class we add methods, right? So if I have done some coding in this project, and if I want to create some reusable methods, for example, I have created a login method for my application which will take care of login to an application, and now there is another project, then he also wants to automate a login. Then rather than writing a code again, what probably we'll do is we'll say, hey, I have already done that, can't you use my code? Either he can copy paste your code, there is one way, or you will say, let me share a code in some format so that it will be easy for you to get started, because there are two different projects, so of course they can't talk to each other. There is no communication happening between them, because inside a project, if you write multiple class files, they can talk to each other, right? By creating some kind of object oriented programming, we can make sure that the files within a project will be able to communicate with each other. But if I have one project here and another project here, or maybe on a different machine, on altogether a different hardware, then how do they contact to each other? Or if this project wants to use something which is in this project, how he'll use it? And that is why what we do is we create a jar of this complete project. So when we create a jar, what we say, hey, I have a jar file. Inside that jar I have lot of packages. Inside the packages I have lot of class files. Inside class files I have lot of methods. So now if you want to use a login method, it's available in this jar file. So what you need to do, this guy who want to consume that login method, he'll say, okay, just give me the jar file. He'll download that jar from some link, then add at a project level, because when he'll run his code, he want to inform a compiler that, hey, rather than just considering my code while running, please understand that I'm using some method which are coming from external libraries, or I may call it as jars, then please use them while running a code, right? So in this example, if I have this project and this project, let me expand this. So if you see, this project has its own structure, it has its own package, then it has its own class. Inside a class it has its own method, right? I have created this calculator class just for a demo, but yes, this project has its own hierarchy. Similarly, there is another project here. This project, if I expand, he has its own hierarchy, right? They are totally different Java projects. And when some project want to use a method which is inside a Selenium tool project, now let's say this is the method I have written in this project. I have created a package. Inside a package I have created a calculator class, and inside a class I have created a simple method. One is add number and another is greet user. There are two different methods I have created, right? Now if I want to give this method, if someone wants to use this method, how they'll use it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a jar file for this complete project, and then I'm gonna give that jar file to the person who will be interested to use this method, and then that person will add that jar file in his project's build path, and by doing that he'll able to consume this method. So let's do that as in practical, and then you will able to understand what I'm talking here. And in the same way we can relate what we do in Selenium. Okay, so let's do one thing. Now this is very easy, that's why I already coded it. I didn't want to code it in the video, so let me quickly go over it. I simply created a normal Java project, and then I created a normal package. I just named it com.ministryofautomation.com. You can name it whatever you want. Inside that you can right click, create a new class. I created a calculator class, simple class. It doesn't have anything, not even a main method if you have seen. And then inside that class I created what? A normal add number method. Okay, public int, it accepts two numbers, and that's it. It is just printing that hey, I'm inside this method. adding those numbers and returning the number. That's it, it's doing. Okay, just adding two numbers and returning the sum of the two numbers. And I have another method which is greet user, which is saying, hey, whatever name you pass, I'm gonna print a welcome message for that person. Okay, two different methods. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a jar file for this project, because we are interested to distribute this. So right click and go to export. So when you do export, you will already see under Java you will have a jar file as an option. Okay, so there is another called a runnable jar. Don't worry about that. That is kind of an executable. In .NET we create .exe. In Java we can create a runnable jar when we want to create a running application through that jar. Here our intention is not. We just want to create a library which can be distributed to the rest of the folks, right? So just select this jar file, click next, and then select, let it be both the default one, and then select export Java source files and resources. Just select this, and then either you can say finish, and then here you see it has automatically took that on my desktop. It's gonna create a jar file named Selenium tool. Basically it took the name of a project .jar, right? So it's creating one jar for this one project, and then I'll say okay, let's create it, and select finish. I already have it, so I'm just overwriting it. You may not get this pop-up, so say yes, and then say okay, and that's it. Now let's see on my desktop. Now if I go to my desktop, now this is my desktop, and yep, here you see, let me put it like this. Now here you see Selenium jar. You can see the timestamp also, right? So I created a jar file. Now what? Now let's try to create another project. So let's now focus on this guy. Now this guy has done his job. He has created a class, created a method, created a jar file, and now the jar is ready. Now this guy, who is a consumer of this library, I may call it as now what this guy needs to do, he needs to download that jar, he needs to add it to a build path, and then try to consume a method which are written inside those jar files, right? Same thing we do in Selenium. So let's create a new project, and then here I'll say using jar. Very bad name, but oh sorry, here I need to mention what type of project it is. So I'll say Java project, simple Java project, and then give the name. I'm say using jar, and then that's it, finish. Now here what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to src, and then right click, create a package. I'll say testing Selenium tool, and then finish. And then inside this, right click, new class. We're gonna create a new class. I'll say welcome, and then let's say main method, because we want to see and run this. Cool. So we created a project, then package, then class, and then method. So remember this hierarchy, guys. Now here I have a main method. Now our interest is we want to use that methods which was inside a jar file of the Selenium tool, the one which we created, right? Let me expand this and show side by side for you guys. Now here, even though I can see the code, generally when you're downloading and getting a jar from some external sources, you may not able to exactly see this. There are processes to do that, but generally you don't intend to go and see the actual implementation or actual code inside those jar, right? So now I want to use this add number method. So generally in object-oriented programming, what you guys do, you create an object of a class, and then using an object you basically get access to all the methods inside it, correct? If that language sounds difficult to you, let's understand now. Our interest is to use these methods which is in some other project, and that is why what we're gonna do now, we're gonna add the jars which we have created, right? How do we do that? Right click, either you can go to property or you can go to build path. Either way, I'll go to properties. Now in the Java build path, go to external jar, and then we're gonna add that jar, the one which we just now created. So I'll go to Selenium tool.jar. This is the desktop. Open. So if you see, this jar has been added, and I'll say apply and close. Cool. Now what? Now let's try to create an object of a class. Which class? Calculator class, because we want to consume the method inside it, correct? And that is why, if you remember, we create an object when we use a Selenium tool, when we want to consume any methods which are inside the Selenium jars, we create object of it. We even create object of a WebDriver, right? So here what we're gonna create a class name let's say obj equal to new class name, right? Simple syntax of creating an object, and then semicolon. But we are getting error. Why? Let's hover your mouse, and then you say import calculator class. Now you guys can understand that when we start writing Selenium code, you also see this kind of import drop downs, right? When you write WebDriver, then try to create a driver object, and then you hover your mouse and import that WebDriver, right? Now you cannot relate with it. Now I'm clicking on that import, and now you see it has imported from where? It has imported from my jars, the one which we added it. And now I'll Control S, I'll save it. Now you see I have this obj created object of a class calculator, which is not in this project, right? In this project it is coming from something else. Now let me even close this. Now let's say obj dot. The moment you say obj dot, now interesting thing is, now you see this add number, this method coming from calculator class. One more method, greet user, coming from calculator class. You remember these two methods we have written where? We have written in our previous project and class, for which we created a jar and added it here. Now I'm going to use add to number, and here let's say I'm going to add 5 and 10 because we are giving input to a method. And now this method returns what? Just hover your mouse, it returns int. So let's do one thing, let's try to capture that int in result. Now whatever the output of this method will get stored and in this particular variable, and then let me try to print this. So Cisco control space for system.out.println, and I'll say printing result of the just say printing result equal to, and append this variable. Cool. Now let's run this program. Right click, run as Java application. Interesting. Now you see this method is accepting this input, adding them, and giving back the result as 15, and that's what we are printing it here. Now this is what you guys need to understand. Now this method is developed or written or coded by whom? Some other people who has developed this particular tool or this particular project. Under that they have written a lot of class files. Inside the class files they have written their own code. Are you basically doing anything with the add number methods? Of course not. You are a consumer, right? You are just consuming it. How? You are adding that jar file. If I don't add that jar files in my project, will I still able to create an object of a calculator class? No, you will get error because your project will not understand what you're trying to do, correct? Because you added those jar files first and then you tried to create object of a class because you wanted to access a method inside those calculator class. When you hover your mouse, it is suggesting you that hey, looks like there is a class in the imported jars named calculator. Do you would like to import it? Which means you would like to start using it. And then you say hey, yeah, why not? And that's why you are able to consume the method inside that calculator class, which is coming from your jar file. And this is what I want you guys to understand. This is what happens exactly in the Selenium. Selenium folks has developed a lot of classes, a lot of methods for you, and they are distributing that by compressing them, putting them in a jar files. And now you, when you are writing automation, you are basically a consumer of those jar files, and that is why you download those jars, you add those jars in your Java build path, and then when you create an object and consume the methods inside those jars, you basically, you are, while running a code, your compiler understands that hey, this particular method add number, this particular method is coming from some other code repository or some other Java files, right, which is inside a jar, and that is why you need a jar. So now the question is, Saurabh, I think that makes sense. Is it like I can create my own utility, or I can write something and then if I want to distribute it, I'll also create a jar and give it to my teammates or someone else? Answer is yes. That is how the open source tools comes into the market, guys. If you feel that you have done something extraordinary, if you feel that this can be used by some other people also, then create a generic project, create some generic methods and have a proper documentation, create a jar files and put it out there. Now there are multiple ways to distribute those jars. Now the famous technology right now, which most of the automation people are using, is Maven. You can publish your jar files on Maven. It is kind of a, those who don't know what is Maven, it is kind of a, let's say, a Google Drive for uploading a technical artifacts. Okay, so I'll cover another topic of for Maven, which is also interesting and a very powerful technology. But yes, if you know, at least at this stage, if you want to understand that why we are downloading Selenium JAR, I think the answer would be clear to you. That what we are basically doing, we are adding that JAR in our project. The reason because we want to consume methods which are coming from those JAR files, right? And if you don't add them, then you'll not able to consume the methods. That's it for this session, guys. And if you like my video, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any suggestions for me. Thank you. See you in the next video.